Maria set an empty box on the carpet next to David. He put the box on his grandmother's dresser and started filling it with half-empty bottles of perfume, crumpled tissues, and receipts. Maria stood with her arms akimbo and scanned the small bedroom. A pile of clothes lay on top of a stripped mattress that was pushed against the wall. On the floor next to it lay the bones of a broken-down bed frame. 2 contractor bags sat next to the bedroom door.
Is this trash?
Linens, we can donate those, said David over his shoulder.
And the clothes on the bed, too?
Mm-hmm.
What about the stuff in the living room?
The living room, this box, those boxes, everything is trash. We'll leave it at the curb when we go. David huffed, picked up the box from the dresser, and held it from the bottom. He bent his arm and swept everything off the dresser into it. Glass rattled and coins jangled. He dropped the box on the ground.
I think you're throwing out some quarters.
David gave her a flat, tired look. I just want to be finished. Maria nodded and leaned back against the wall.
I don't want to sound mean, but I think it's weird your grandma didn't hang anything on the walls or have any books or photo albums or anything.
Yep, she was weird. David tore off a bag from a heavy roll of contractor bags and began stuffing it with the clothes on the mattress.
Was your grandpa pretty weird, too?
Oh, big time.
But you turned out okay.
Maybe my dad was normal.
Did they ever talk about your dad?
Never. They hardly spoke at all.
Even when...
Maria... David waved his hand, took a breath, and stood up. He turned around, scratching his forehead with his thumb, looking away from her. Silence hung between them. I'm sorry. I'm exhausted, and I just want this to be over with.
I know. This sucks.
David smiled weakly. Can you grab that box and clean out the vanity? Throw everything out. Maria nodded. David got back to work on the clothes. The jewelry's all fake. Toss it, he said from the other side of the room. Maria threw out costume jewelry, empty packs of cigarettes, and travel-sized bags of tissues. She opened a small drawer on the vanity. Beneath a pile of receipts, old shopping lists, and scrap paper was an unmarked yellow mailer envelope, fastened shut with string. She opened it, and inside were 2 photos and a cutout from a magazine. One photo was a brittle 10 by 12 black and white picture of a bride and a groom. On the back was something scribbled in faded ink. Another was a bent 3 by 5 color photo of a serious-looking man kneeling next to a child. He had his arm around the boy and wasn't smiling. Maria unfolded and straightened out a page torn from the magazine. It was an Associated Press photo of a soldier pulling a child by the hand, running down a bombed-out road. The same child was in both pictures.
Whoa, David? Pictures.
David stopped and turned around. Seriously?
Look!
She handed him the wedding photo. I don't recognize them. But neither are smiling, so it must be my grandparents.
Oh, what's it say on the back?
Something in Croatian, I think. What about the others? Maria handed David the 3 by 5. He sucked in a deep breath and his cheeks flushed. Wow, that's definitely me. He flipped the picture around and pointed to the man. I think this is my dad. God, I've never seen a picture of him.
Wow, you guys are identical.
David gently moved his fingers over his father's face. Holy shit, whispered David, staring at the photograph.
Hey, look at this,
said Maria, handing him the magazine clipping. David raised his eyebrows. What the fuck? That's me!
Who's the soldier?
David shook his head. I have no idea. It's from the Civil War. Man, I don't remember this. David rubbed his forehead and stared at the photo. Jesus, fuck me. Maria looked at the picture over his shoulder.
That's an AP photo. I bet we can reverse image search it on Google.
Yeah, I bet you're right. David nodded, put the photos back in the envelope, and walked into the kitchen. Maria turned off the light and followed. David was bent over, putting his shoes on. I think we're done for the day. He tied his shoes and was out the front door. Hey, Maria, check this out. Maria took a seat on the couch next to David. His laptop was illuminating his face. Well, it's taken 2 weeks, but I think I've finally found a few things. So first, I think this guy saved my life. He pointed at the screen and read aloud. May 1st, 1995, Croatian National Guard Lieutenant Luka Viznik leads a child to safety during the shelling of Okučani. David looked at Maria with wide eyes. My family's from Okučani, in Croatia, and this picture could have been taken the day my parents died. Now, check this out. David clicked to another tab. Maria stopped him.
Oh, wait, were Croatians the good guys?
David looked up from his screen. I mean, yes, and not just because I'm Croatian. All civil wars are nasty, but yeah, we were the good guys.
What were they fighting over?
Yugoslavia got all fucked up when the USSR started to fall. Croatians wanted to break away and form their own country, but a lot of Serbians lived in Croatia and wanted to stick with Yugoslavia, and it got really hairy. I mean, I'm sure there was bad shit on both sides, but Serbs killed a ton of Croatian women and children, along with my parents. All of Serbia's top military leadership were eventually convicted of war crimes and got life in prison, so yeah, Serbs were pretty bad.
Jesus.
Well, I mean, a handful of our guys went away, too. Anyway, David pointed at his laptop. I searched the soldier's name. He was killed a few weeks after the picture was taken, which I feel weird about, but check this out. The photo linked to a message board for Croatian refugees in the States. David paused. I found this guy's brother. Maria looked at the screen. It was a small, bare-bones site, mostly in Croatian, with splatterings of broken English. David scrolled, revealing the picture of him with the soldier. Text underneath said, "Do you know this boy?" Maria put her hand on her chin and shook her head in disbelief. David smirked. I reached out a few days ago. His name is Milan Viznik. He emailed me some pictures of him and his brother, and I sent the one of me and my dad to prove it was me, and he's only 2.5 hours away in Cleveland. Maria nodded quietly. He wants to meet me. What do you think? Maria squeezed his hand.
I think you should meet him.
Yeah, me too. David rested his head on Maria's shoulder. I can't believe it. She put her arm around him. David laughed. This is crazy. David pulled up to 1331 West 117th Street in Lakewood, Ohio, and parked in the street. He took the envelope of photos off the passenger seat, got out of the car, and looked up at an old 3-story Victorian house with a large porch. Every other lawn in the neighborhood was covered with autumn leaves, but this yard was spotless. A tidy garden ran around the front of the house, its flowers drooping in the evening cold. He walked up the driveway, took the steps 2 at a time, and rang the doorbell. Footsteps creaked from the back of the house, growing louder as they got closer. The door opened, revealing a well-built, older man, so tall his head just barely cleared the doorframe. He had thick salt and pepper hair that was neatly parted to the side, olive skin and dark eyes beneath heavy eyebrows. His face had handsome, strong features with the wrinkles of a smoker. Broad shoulders and sculpted biceps bulged in a tight polo shirt that was tucked into loose, baggy jeans. Despite his age, he was big and intimidating. He met eyes with David and stared through him without any expression, like he was in a trance. The man swallowed hard. Blood pounded in David's ears. The man blinked quickly, and David got the sense the man was frightened. David put out his hand to break the silence. Hi, I'm David Gadavina from the picture. The man shook out of his daze and snapped back into it. He wet his lips and cleared his throat. David Gadavina, he repeated back, slowly enunciating each syllable of David's name. The man finally smiled and took David's hand with a giant grin. I am Milan, David Gadavina. Come in, it's freezing, he said with a heavy accent. Milan led him into the house and shut the door behind him. Thank you so much for visiting. My God, all grown up. All these years. David followed him into the living room, and Milan offered him a seat. The walls were hung with family pictures, and the room was perfectly clean. There were fresh tracks in the carpet where Milan had run the vacuum. Something was cooking in the kitchen, and it smelled delicious. Milan sat in a rocking chair across from David and stared at him, smiling and shaking his head.
Traffic wasn't bad?
Oh, no, not at all. It's a quick drive. David stammered through his words as his nerves lifted.
You know, this is the second time you've been a guest in my house.
David's heart skipped. Really?
Really? It's okay you don't remember. You don't hurt my feelings. Last time was long ago. Do not worry. We are much safer now than last time.
Milan smiled with his entire face, but his eyes remained blank, like he was looking far away, leaving David feeling unsettled. David tucked away his discomfort. The man had lived through a civil war. Well, thank you for taking me in again. I can't believe this.
Technology is a wonderful thing. It brings you and me together once more. It helps us to make peace with the past.
David nodded, but words escaped him. He didn't know where to start. Milan rocked back and forth, leaning forward. He pointed at the envelope on David's lap.
Those are your pictures. May I see them?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Milan opened the envelope and took them out.
So few.
My grandparents didn't bring anything with them from Croatia. I didn't even know those pictures existed until a few weeks ago. Milan looked at the wedding photos. I think that's my grandparents. Honestly, I'm not sure. I don't have any pictures of them when they were young. And it says something on the back, but I don't speak Croatian. Milan flipped it over and studied it, sucking on his lower lip. What does it say?
Miroslav and Petra Martic, June 8th, 1938. Wedding day.
Milan tapped the photo.
And this is in Serbian, David, not Croatian.
Oh. Weird. It can't be them then. Can I see it? Milan handed it back to him.
Is that name familiar to you? Martic.
David took a closer look. Nope. Why would they be friends with Serbians? Milan laughed.
We were not always enemies, you know. We were happy neighbors for a very long time.
David set the picture on the coffee table as Milan stared at the 3x5 of David and his father. I'm pretty sure that's my dad, Zvonimir. Milan held it up and looked from the photo to David, then back to the photo.
Zvonimir and David Gotovina. Oh, you look just like him.
Did you know him? Milan leaned forward and put the picture upside down on top of the wedding photo.
I did not know him. No, sorry.
David shrugged. Don't be sorry, I didn't know him either. Milan rocked back and forth.
What have your grandparents told you about your dad and your people or Croatia?
David shook his head. Absolutely nothing. I only know my parents by name. My grandparents didn't even speak Croatian at home, only broken English. I had to be put in a special program in first grade because I could hardly speak English myself.
That is a shame,
Milan said flatly.
But your English is very good, better than mine, even.
David laughed. Milan leaned back and folded his hands across his belly. His eyes were miles away, staring blankly through the ceiling. I have that other picture with your brother, Luca. Am I pronouncing that right?
Luca. Yes, you're pronouncing it right,
said Milan without looking at David. David leaned over the coffee table to unfold the picture of him and Luca.
No.
Milan grabbed David's arm to stop him. Milan's hand was cold and clammy. David froze.
It is okay. I have seen this picture enough times.
David slowly released his arm from Milan's grip and sat back on the couch. Milan stared off. The silence made David's throat tighten. What was he like, Luca? Milan looked away from the ceiling and exhaled softly.
Kind, funny, very stupid.
David smirked. Milan suddenly became very animated and leaned forward.
David, have you ever had Rakija?
I don't think so. Milan sat back and laughed.
You are not a true Croatian unless you've drank Rakija, David. Come with me.
Milan rose and led David to the kitchen. A single place setting was laid out on the table with a cloth napkin, real silverware, matching china, and a crystal wine glass. Steam poured out of a deep stock pot on the stove. Milan opened the cabinet over the refrigerator and pulled out a glass bottle of light amber liquid along with one small stemmed glass. He blew into the glass and wiped it off on his shirt.
I brought this bottle with me home from Okochani, and I've never opened it. I make a promise that I would only drink it on a truly special occasion. Tonight is that occasion. Don't tell me you don't drink, David Gatovina.
Oh, I drank, said David.
Ah, good.
Milan set the bottle and glass down next to the place setting. He put his hand on David's shoulder and looked deep into his eyes.
David, I think we should toast to my brother.
David smiled. I'd love to. Milan nodded.
But before I do, there's something I want to show you. I've kept it all these years, hoping one day we would be reunited.
Oh, David stammered. No, I can't take anything from you. Milan furrowed his brow.
No, it is for you. I only have a few things left, but it is rightfully yours. Come, help me bring it up, and we will toast.
Sure. Milan opened the door next to the pantry and flipped on a light switch.
After you,
he said. David met Milan at the door. He looked down into the basement when his legs were swept out from under him. David grabbed him by the shoulder and hurled him down the stairs. David's stomach rose up to his throat as he was suspended in a free fall before he came crashing down on the cement steps and was knocked unconscious. David woke up with a start. There was an intense ringing in his ears, and he could only see out of one eye. A piercing pain stabbed into his side every time he took a breath. He leaned forward to spit out blood, but his mouth was duct-taped shut. He instinctively moved to pull the tape off his mouth, but his arms were chained behind him around a post. David kicked against the concrete, but only one leg would move. The room slowly came into focus. Milan was sitting across from him with his legs crossed. A glass, a bottle of Rakija, a hunting knife, and 4 photographs were spread on the ground between them, face down.
David, you are awake.
David groaned.
Finally, I can open this.
Milan opened the Rakija, poured it into a small glass, and took a sip. He shut his eyes as he swallowed and slowly exhaled, savoring every moment.
David, it is time for your history lesson.
Milan got up, crouched over David, and ripped the tape off his mouth. He brought his fingers to his lips.
Speak, and you die.
David spat out blood and caught his breath. Milan returned to where he was sitting. He leaned forward and flipped over the first photograph. It was the black and white wedding photo from the vanity.
Miroslav and Petra Martic, husband and wife, parents of...
Milan turned over another photograph. It was a man in camouflage fatigues with his arms behind his back, standing at attention.
Radovan Martic.
David struggled to see through double vision, but the man in the photo looked familiar.
This is Radovan Martic, father of...
Milan flipped over the third photograph. It was the picture of David and his father.
Father of David Martic, a.k.a. David Gatovina.
He pointed at David's father.
Radovan Martic.
Milan turned over the final photograph. It was a family photo of Milan, a smiling woman with a round face, and 3 young boys.
Radovan Martic, murderer of Milan's family.
No, grunted David.
Yes, David. And no more speaking.
He poured another glass of Rakija and took a sip.
Operation Flash, 1995. The war was almost over. My brother was coming back from patrol when he finds a little boy alone in the street. The middle of a battlefield is not safe for a child, he thinks. He goes to help the child when artillery explodes over the street. So he grabs the child's hand and pulls him to safety.
Milan pantomimed bringing a camera to his face.
That's when the journalist goes click.
He set the imaginary camera down.
I hear a knock on my door.
Milan rapped his knuckles on the concrete floor 3 times.
I open up. There is my brother with the little boy. Why have you brought the boy to my house? I have 3 boys of my own, I say. He says, just take care of this boy until I come back. He turns to leave. I say, where are you going? He says, to fight. I never see my brother again.
Milan poured another glass of Rakija and drank it down.
So the boy stays with me. He's a nice boy. Gets along with my boys. Only speaks Serbian, but we do not hold that against him. I ask him where his mama is. He says she is gone. I ask him where he lives. He says he does not know. I do not realize this is a famous boy with a famous father who saw his son in the newspaper. A photo of him running down the street. His father is now capturing people, asking them, who is this man with my son? But no one answers. He captures more people. He captures my neighbors. Finally, someone says, hey, that's Luca with the boy. When another person goes, well, Luca is dead. When another person goes, why don't you go ask Luca's brother?
Milan flipped over each photograph face down, one by one. He put the cork in the rakia, picked up the hunting knife, and stood up. He walked over to David and stared down at him.
So what do you think Radovan Martic does when he shows up with his friends at my house? Do you think we have a friendly conversation? Do you think we look at photographs and laugh like we are old pals? Do I offer him Rakija? Or does he take my wife, my children, in the front yard, and one by one?
Milan slowly ran the dull edge of the knife across his own throat without breaking eye contact with David, without blinking. Milan sat down across from David, tapping the knife against his thigh. He faded off like he did earlier in the living room, staring at nothing in the darkness. David breathed heavily. Panic trickled down his back. He moved his tongue around his broken teeth.
Well, why didn't he kill you, too?
Milan snapped out of his trance.
He gave me the knife he used to kill my wife and boys. It was this knife, as a matter of fact. And he says to me in Croatian, thanks for keeping an eye on my boy.
David couldn't catch his breath. The room began to spin.
David,
said Milan. He stared at the ceiling and bit his lip.
What?
Wheezed David.
I never wanted you in my house to begin with. And now that you're here...
Milan paused.
What? I feel afraid again. Like your father is going to come looking for you. He's going to knock on my door. My father's dead, Milan.
Milan nodded.
That's right. Good. I'm safe then. No one is looking anymore. My girlfriend knows I'm here.
Milan looked through him.
I didn't think of that. It's okay.
Milan ladled soup into his bowl and put the lid back on the stock pot. He sat down at the single place setting and went to pour himself rakia when he realized he left it in the basement. He went to the door and headed down the stairs. Milan stepped over David's body, careful not to get blood on his shoes, and picked up the bottle of liquor in his glass. He looked at David. David's face was gray. His head was slumped to the side and his eyes were half open. The hunting knife was still in his chest, stuck between his ribs. Milan considered pulling it out, but left it where it was. It was better David kept it. It belonged to his father anyway.